Have you ever felt attacked spiritually righteous when you seem to be doing everything right? Have you ever had the feeling that the more light you emit, the more life starts to go wrong? That's that. What few have the courage to say is that not every problem comes from your head, many are clear signs of an invisible war against you. And the reason? You are an evolved soul, and that bothers you very much. There's an uncomfortable truth that no one has told you: demons don't persecute just anyone. They go straight to the chosen ones. In those who carry light, wisdom and ancient spiritual codes. It seems unfair, but it makes perfect sense. The higher you vibrate, the more you become a target for dark energies. And what seems like coincidence, tiredness, or bad luck, it is often a disguised spiritual attack. In this content, I'll show you the 5 hidden, and real, reasons why dark entities approach the strongest souls. And you'll understand why feeling too much, thinking too much, and even being too different could be exactly why you're being tested endlessly. But more than understanding, you will learn to shield yourself and come out of this war stronger than ever. Prepare yourself to see what is beyond the visible. This knowledge will provoke you, confront you, and, if you apply it, set you free. Because it is not enough to wake up, it is necessary to protect yourself. And if, at any point in the reading, you feel that this was done for you, comment below. 44. This number is the code of someone who is not here by chance. It is curious how certain people simply bother the environment without even opening their mouths. They walk into a room and suddenly everything seems heavy. It's not about arrogance, it's about light. An evolved soul, which vibrates at the frequency of light, carries with it a glow that directly confronts spiritual darkness. This glow is not artificial, it is forged in pain, in healing, in overcoming. And that is precisely why the demonic presence stirs when this light appears. The truth is, the more someone aligns with their spiritual mission, the more they become a target in an invisible war. It is not a spiritual drama, but a reality ignored by many. Spiritual attacks do not choose a time, they can come in the form of inexplicable tiredness, constant conflicts, or even a sadness that is not yours. And do you know why? Because darkness recognizes the soldier before he even realizes that he is in a spiritual battle. Have you ever seen someone start to connect more with the divine and, suddenly, everything starts to go wrong? It's classic. Spiritual awakening comes with bonuses, and also with tests. The demons and chosen ones coexist on this plane, and the more intense the light, the more desperate the dark energy to try to extinguish it. It's as if a spotlight were on in the middle of the night, impossible not to attract glances, including unwanted ones. Those who have an old soul feel this from an early age. That feeling of not belonging, of carrying a weight that you don't understand. This is because the spirit has already come up with codes that irritate the forces operating in the shadows. Divine protection is real, but it also requires awareness. Walking with light in a dark world is an act of courage, and requires constant preparation. So when someone feels that they are being persecuted spiritually, maybe it is not paranoia. Perhaps it is a sign that your light is expanding. And when that happens, the universe begins to test the ability to discern the spiritual portals that open, both for good and for the trap of misdirected empathy. There is a very fine line between compassion and spiritual self-sabotage. Many evolved souls carry such intense empathy that they absorb pain that is not even theirs. This open heart, although beautiful, can become a true spiritual portal, and not the good ones. The dark energy loves to seep in through these emotional rifts. And when the person does not learn to discern, he becomes a sponge of suffering for others. Who has never helped someone so much who ended up exhausted, as if they had been spiritually beaten? This is more common than it seems. The frequency of light attracts confessions, outbursts, calls for help. But without divine protection, this opening can attract demonic presence disguised as a victim. A malicious hug, a look of camouflaged envy, everything can be an open door if there is no spiritual vigilance. That's where the spiritual test comes in, helping without getting lost. It does not mean hardening the heart, but learning to say no when necessary. A good example is when you realize that whenever you talk to a certain person, you get a headache or discouragement. This is a spiritual sign that something is draining your light. An herbal bath, daily prayer, and guided meditation can be simple ways to shield your energy. Unfiltered empathy is not a virtue, it is a trap. When demons realize that a soul is vulnerable from excessive compassion, they sneak in. Disguised as neediness, emotional blackmail, or even friendship. And when you see it, you're caught up in an invisible war that isn't even yours. Therefore, spiritual discernment is not a luxury, it is a basic need. Many do not realize that this, feeling too much, is one of the ways that the dark ones use to erase the warriors of the light. What seems like harmless kindness may actually be opening spiritual portals that bring even more weight to the journey. And in the midst of this silent battle, isolation arises. A strategy used for millennia by occult forces to weaken the chosen. There are people who feel loneliness even before they know what it means. From childhood, it seems that there is a forced distancing, friendships that do not last, bonds that are broken without explanation. This is no coincidence. When an evolved soul begins to align with the frequency of light, spiritual darkness mobilizes to isolate. It's not just about sadness, it's an invisible war going on in silence. Isolation is often a strategic tactic of the dark ones. By separating the chosen one from the group, from support, from fellowship, demons try to weaken their faith, undermine their identity, and disrupt spiritual awakening. You know that period when everything seems to move away from you? People, opportunities, even the spirit. This can be a spiritual attack disguised as alone time. But here's a secret that few understand: this isolation can be a blessing in disguise. It is at this time, where everything seems to have disappeared, that the spirit is strengthened. Great revelations come in silence. It is like sharpening the sword before spiritual warfare. Use this time for daily spiritual practices, prayer, study, fasting, writing visions or dreams, and you will find that loneliness can become fuel. Many people try to fill this void by throwing themselves into toxic relationships, digital distractions, or excessive work. But this delays the process even more. The spiritual signs are there. When nothing else fills up, it's time to look within. Because, you see, the demons and chosen ones are playing chess, and those who are distracted by pawns don't see checkmate. And when you start to realize the purpose behind that isolation, something changes. The old soul remembers. The spirit begins to decode the reason for silence and understands that solitude is also a training room. But make no mistake, while this is happening, fallen entities watch. With envy. And in a hurry to put out a flame that hasn't even fully ignited yet. Do you know that feeling of being watched even when you're alone? It may not be paranoia, it may be spiritual envy. Dark entities recognize, from a distance, the brightness of those who carry divine codes. When an evolved soul begins to align with its mission, it becomes a real threat. And the dark energy, like a radar, identifies this instantly. These fallen beings do not hate the person, they hate what he carries. It is as if they see a spark that reminds them of what they have lost. Therefore, they do everything to prevent the spiritual awakening of those who have been sealed by God. Have you noticed how, at certain decisive moments, sabotage arises? People come up with confusing advice, opportunities arise that divert your focus. That's part of the spiritual battle. They operate subtly, like whispers in thought, like invisible pressures. But the spiritual attack doesn't have to be explicit to be devastating. Sometimes, it comes disguised as distraction, doubt, insecurity. When a demonic presence realizes that you are about to inspire other souls, it steps forward with everything it can to extinguish your light. And the most ironic? The more love you emanate, the more it bothers you. Because pure love is a language that demons cannot stand. It is like an alarm that gives them away. Therefore, the chosen one needs to be in constant connection with divine protection. Praying before bed, shielding your mind with words of life and avoiding charged environments are practical attitudes that protect the soul. The ancient soul, marked by ancestral missions, carries this glow almost like a curse in the eyes of darkness. They know that if that soul awakens, spiritual portals will open for many others. Therefore, the goal of the dark is to stop the movement before it spreads. And many times, they look for their breaches in the wounds that are still open. Every emotional wound that is ignored becomes a hotspot for the invisible. It's like leaving a door ajar in a dark alley. Sooner or later, something comes in. The evolved soul, when it carries untreated trauma, emits a vibration of pain that attracts demonic presence like a beacon in the night. It is not weakness, it is lack of spiritual armor. And the strongest spiritual attacks usually aim exactly at these cracks. Therefore, feelings such as hurt, rejection, humiliation or guilt cannot be swept under the rug. Each of them functions as a secret password that allows dark energy to infiltrate. Have you ever seen someone who lives in constant anger and at the same time attracts confusion after confusion? This is a clear example of spiritual warfare being fueled by unhealed wounds. And it's not just about emotions, unresolved memories also vibrate. Sometimes, the smell of a place, a specific song, or a harmless conversation can reopen spiritual portals linked to the past. Therefore, it is essential to practice self-knowledge with courage. Therapy, prayers of deliverance, intuitive writing, and even emotional fasting are all practical ways to begin this healing process. The problem is that, many times, spiritual people believe that faith alone is enough. Faith is a shield, yes. But if the heart is cracked, even faith escapes through the gaps. Therefore, part of spiritual awakening is to face these pains head-on. Not to sink into them, but to cleanse them with light. A clean spirit is more difficult for shadowy entities to access. Old souls carry marks of other lives, of generations, of battles that the conscious mind does not even remember. And when these marks are not purified, they become compasses for darkness. They know where those wounds are, and they strike there, silently. And while they try to prevent the cure, the spirit remembers, of old codes, which can no longer be ignored. Some people carry within them a wisdom that no one has taught. It is as if they already know, intuitively, the way. These evolved souls are not starting from scratch, they are just remembering. They carry old codes, spiritual programming that was activated in other lifetimes. And that, my friend, scares the spiritual darkness in a way you can't even imagine. The demons and chosen ones recognize each other in the spiritual field even before any word is spoken. When a soul carries these codes, it bothers them because it has the potential to break cycles. Sometimes, you don't even know why certain people have gratuitous pet peeve with you. This is the energy of darkness trying to destabilize something she has not yet been able to decipher, but which she knows is dangerous to her. And these codes manifest themselves in the form of gifts, recurring dreams, visions, sensations that seem to make no sense. Spiritual awakening is precisely the moment when these files begin to be accessed. Therefore, practices such as deep meditation, silent prayer, and connection with nature help activate these records. The more you access, the more your light bothers the unseen forces. But beware, with this type of access also comes more refined spiritual tests. Temptations are no longer obvious, they arrive camouflaged in perfect offerings. The goal? Distract you from your mission. It is like offering a feast to a hungry warrior in the midst of spiritual battle. Therefore, vigilance is the watchword. And knowing when to back off is also wisdom. The curious thing is that the more these codes are revealed, the more intense the battle becomes. Because now you're not just a potential threat, you've become an agent of transformation. And for this reason, spiritual attacks become even more subtle, often during sleep, where the soul is more exposed. Few people know, but the greatest spiritual battles do not happen during the day. It is at night, in the silence of sleep, that the demons operate more freely. When the conscience sleeps, the spirit travels, and not always to quiet places. It is common for evolved souls to report intense dreams, nocturnal paralysis, or falling sensations when sleeping. All of this could be a sign of an invisible war in progress. These nightly spiritual attacks are strategies to implant fear, doubt, and disorientation. The demonic presence takes advantage of the vulnerable state to try to block old codes that begin to reveal themselves. You know that recurring dream of chasing, falling, or screaming without sound? Often, it's more than a nightmare, it's a spiritual battlefield. And it repeats itself because there is something that needs to be faced. At these times, divine protection needs to be activated before the body rests. Praying with authority, sealing the room with words of light, lighting a natural incense or psalm of protection are simple attitudes that make a difference. The spirit recognizes the safe environment, and the soul is strengthened even when sleeping. The frequency of light remains active, making it difficult for the dark energy to act. It is also during sleep that many receive revelations, visions, warnings, spiritual signs. Therefore, keeping a dream notebook can be a powerful tool. Writing down when you wake up, even without understanding what you saw, is a step to decode the spiritual portals that are being accessed. The old soul knows that not everything is just daydreaming. Sometimes the dream is an urgent warning from on high. And the higher the spirit, the more sophisticated the attack. It will not always come as terror, sometimes it comes as seduction, an illusion of power, or false comfort. Because for the demons and the chosen, there is no respite. Spiritual warfare does not wait for physical awakening. And the most dangerous tests happen when you believe you're safe. Anyone who thinks that the strongest have an easy life is wrong. In fact, they are the most tested. The evolved soul, by vibrating high, draws attention, both from the spiritual light and from the dark. And that's where one of the most subtle games comes in, temptation. It's not just about carnal desires, but about offerings that look good, aligned, too much. Spiritual attacks become sophisticated because the enemy knows who he is dealing with. You know when everything starts to work out, but inside you feel that something is strange. It can be more than intuition. It can be a high-level spiritual test. The dark forces will no longer attack you with obvious things. Now they send lavish distractions, camouflaged invitations, shortcuts that promise everything but charge you. And the old soul feels, this here has something hidden. The spiritual battle, at this stage, is less noisy and more strategic. The attack doesn't come head-on, it seeps in as well-meaning advice, interesting partnerships, ego-inflating compliments. And the ego. It is the favorite playground of the dark energy. Therefore, spiritual vigilance becomes a daily practice. It's not about living in fear, it's about being awake. A practical way to protect yourself. Authenticity. Every time you choose to be true to yourself, you weaken the influence of temptations. And more, develop the habit of consulting the Spirit before any big decision. A simple 30-second prayer can prevent deep falls. And if you slip, that's okay, the important thing is to get up wiser. The invisible war intensifies for those who carry larger missions. And if you're being tempted, maybe it's because you're close to something great. Because what comes after this stage is not just a challenge, it is a revelation. And the closer to the truth, the more the universe begins to stir, even revealing the hidden reasons why darkness persecutes the enlightened. Now that you understand what really goes on behind the spiritual scenes of your journey, I need to ask you, how many times have you thought you were failing, when in fact you were being tested? How many battles have you faced without knowing that you were part of something much bigger? It's time to stop blaming yourself, and start preparing. What are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you leave it for later, or will you start applying it today? Strengthen your connection, clean your wounds, recognize the spiritual signs, and keep your frequency high. Darkness does not persecute those who are lost, they persecute those who are about to meet. And if you've made it this far, you already know which group you're in. Comment below, "I woke up," if this content spoke to you. I want to know who is ready to face this journey with more awareness, clarity, and divine protection. And if this touched your soul in any way, subscribe to the channel now and activate the notifications. There is still much more about this spiritual universe that no one has the courage to explain.